This week's episode is sponsored by NVIDIA.
You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For 50 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Alan Weitz.
Greetings and welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast. My name is Alan Weitz.
And I'm Jill Waterman.
Now, newspaper photography might be considered a lost art by some, but that has not deterred today's guest from making it into an admirable career. In addition to her work for corporate clients, Pulitzer-prize-winning photojournalist Deanne Fitzmaurice has spent more than 2 decades capturing breaking news and pursuing heartfelt stories for the San Francisco Chronicle, among other publications. If that's not enough, in 2005, the same year she won the Pulitzer, Deanne co-founded Think Tank, the innovative camera bag and travel accessories company. Did we mention she's also a Nikon ambassador and a highly sought-after storyteller, lecturer, and educator? Well, she is. Deanne, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that generous introduction.
We only do the best here. So, some background history here. How did you get started into photojournalism? What got you started in that route?
Well, I thought I was going to be an artist. So out of high school, I did the obligatory trip across the country, in an old van that's another story.
That's an van, okay.
That's another story.
Right, okay.
The van, yep. And got to California and fell in love with San Francisco. And so I decided I was going to go to art school. I started out painting and drawing, traditional art classes. Mm-hmm. And I thought I was going to go that way. And then I started to get scared off, realizing I probably wouldn't be able to make a living at it. And honestly, I started to realize I wasn't that good at it. So I started branching out. I took graphic design classes, and I took a photography class as part of that. Now, I had dabbled around a little bit with photography, but never really thought that I could make a living at it. So I took that class and became obsessed. I started taking every photography class that was available, architectural photography, food photography, studio portraiture, all kinds of classes. So I was exposed to a lot of different types of photography.
Right.
But it was photojournalism that just really captured my heart.
For what reason? What stood out from photojournalism? Because you mentioned a lot of interesting disciplines. I mean, architecture, I happen to love architecture. And to me, it's portraiture in a sense, except it's a structure rather than a person. But photojournalism stood out. What was it?
I really like the idea of being on the cutting edge of what was happening.
Okay.
I love people. I love being around people. I love telling stories about people. It's like being a photojournalist, it's part sociology, part archeology. It's like all these different disciplines that in our everyday life as photojournalists, we're learning about new things every day. Mm-hmm. We're mostly learning about people. And I'm just fascinated with it to this day. Like every day would be something different.
That's a biggie. I know there's no routine.
Yeah. And that really resonated with me.
So as a newspaper photographer, how does your approach differ when you're capturing candid moments compared to planned events or planned setups?
Well, as a photojournalist, I was talking about how I got started. They only had one photojournalism class at the Academy of Art. So I didn't really get a strong education in the ethics of journalism. It's not like I went to a journalism school. So I had to learn about the ethics on the street.
Is that because you made enough mistakes early on?
I made all of them and then some. Oh, yeah. So, I learned a lot from my colleagues and just from being out there doing it. And one of the big things is, as a photojournalist, you can't affect the scene. And that's because it has to be believable and it's about credibility. It's so that when people see our images, they believe that's what was there, that it's truthful. If we started changing, altering the scene, people would never believe any picture that we shot. So it's so important that we have those ethics. that we can't alter the scene at all in any way. We can't move things in the scene. We can't change it in Photoshop after the fact. We just have to present what is there.
Exactly.
But there's one instance where you can change things, and that's in portraiture. And that's something that I learned going along. Whenever I would go out and photograph, and I think you just photograph it as it unfolds, when you're doing a portrait, you tell the person what to do. Oh, would you stand over here by this light? Oh, look this way, chin down a little bit. So I'm directing it.
You're directing it, exactly.
Right. So I go from being a fly on the wall on all my assignments to portraiture where I'm directing it. So that was an example of when I could change things and when I just had to let things unfold naturally.
Gotcha. Now, you don't always have control of what's going on when you're taking photographs during a photojournalistic event. Now, do you have any specific methods or techniques for keeping your subjects sort of centered and with you when photographing in chaotic environments?
Yeah, chaotic environments. I'm very familiar with those. So what I try to do is I try to make a connection with the person that I'm photographing.
Key, right.
Yep. Make that personal connection. Put them at ease. Let them understand what it is that I'm doing, why I'm there telling this story. It just helps. They understand it and they're not thinking, why is this photographer stalking me? So you just make it very comfortable for them. This is what I'm doing. These are my intentions. And try to find some common ground sometimes, some things that we can relate to. And then things start unfolding. So I just start photographing.
Yeah.
And then they're at least a little bit comfortable because I've made that personal connection with them. But sometimes that comfort goes away and they start to feel uncomfortable again. And then I'll go back into the scene and maybe I'll put my camera down and just have a conversation with them. And then they relax and then I can get back to photographing again.
As you're talking, you remind me of something that happened just earlier today. Because we're sitting here and recording publicly, people have been coming over and talking to us. And one person came over and was watching us talking and interviewing and said something to the effect of, how do you make it so easy? You just sit down, you're talking, because we're strangers, we don't know each other. And I never thought about that. And I realized that, for 30 years I was a freelancer and I'd be given an assignment and I'd have to go someplace I've never been to photograph people or a person I've never met before, and I have X amount of time, and I have to come back with a good photograph. So you go in and you start presenting yourself. Hi, start getting to know the person, make it clear what you want to do, how you want to do it, try to establish a rapport, and then like that, it just happens. And that's exactly what you just described.
It changes things. In the beginning of my career, I felt like, as I'm learning about the ethics of journalism, I felt like I can't really engage with people because that's kind of crossing the line, that I need to really stand back and be a fly on the wall. So I wasn't engaging with people, and my work felt that way. It looked that way. Once I got it through my head that I need to connect with them, build rapport, make a connection, and then stand back and be a fly on the wall, my work changed. It grew. It became much deeper, much more nuanced.
Yep, absolutely. Once you make that connection, everything else starts to flow a lot better.
So one particular connection you made, which was a very important story, but a very difficult story, was the story you did that won the Pulitzer in 2005 about the Iraqi boy. How did you come upon that, and what kind of challenges did you face?
Yeah, that story is one of the most important stories that I've done on so many levels. That was a one-day story. I was in the newsroom at the Chronicle, and my editor came back and said, a little Iraqi boy, severely injured, has just been brought into Children's Hospital. We want you and a reporter to go out there and do a story for tomorrow's paper. So that one-day story, fast forward, has turned into a 20-year project. It's been a meaningful project for me, and, going back to the beginning, I realized right away that this was not a one-day story, that this story needed to be told well. It needed to be told in a deeper way, more than just one day. We need to spend some time with this. So the writer and I, we agreed, our editors agreed that we should do this. And we had to build trust. And we had to gain the trust of, first of all, of the hospital. The hospital had to say, yes, you can come in and do this story. They were familiar with our work, but still, they said, okay, if the family agrees, then it's okay with us. However, the family spoke Arabic, and we don't speak Arabic.
I was just going to ask you, language.
Yeah, so a huge challenge. So I wanted to tell him why I thought it was important to do this story. So we waited until there was an interpreter there. And I said, I basically told him that I thought it was important that we tell the story of what happened to his son. We said that to the father. Now, his other son died in that same explosion. Saleh picked up what he thought was a ball and turned out to be a bomb. Oh. His older brother came to get it out of his hands, and it blew up, killing the older brother, severely injuring Saleh.
He lost an eye, I believe, and part of a hand?
Yes, yep. He lost an eye, he lost a hand, and on the other side, he lost 4 fingers.
Major. That's major.
And his stomach was blown open. So some pretty serious injuries.
Did they think he was going to make it at all at first?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Because that's serious. Okay.
Oh, yeah, no. His father took him to an Iraqi hospital, and they tried to stabilize him, but they said, we can't save him. Your only hope is to go to the Americans. And it's a harrowing story. So the dad tried to go to the American Air Force base there. So he got over there, and he actually climbed a fence. And, soldiers came out. They thought it was,
they're ready to pull triggers. When you see something like that going on.
Exactly, yeah. They, raised their guns. And Rahim just got to his knees and started crying and said, I need someone to save my son. And that started things. So a doctor there believed him and went and got Saleh and stabilized him. Mm-hmm. And then he was only able to do so much for him. He said, we have to get you to America. So he reached out to a doctor in America who agreed to take him in.
Wow.
And then I just started documenting the story and, followed the story for about 1.5 years. And then it was awarded the Pulitzer. And then I just have continued to photograph him since then. And now he's a man.
So does he still live in...
He still lives in the Bay Area, yes. Yeah.
Now, you did something that was very, very important here. I would say that a lot of our listeners will have a similar situation to that, where they saw something happening, they photographed something, say, like you had a one-day news article, and might have said to himself, this would be a great long-term project, but never follow up on it. You did.
I think long-term projects is really the secret sauce of photography. Uh-huh. It's where photographers do their best work. They just have to believe in it. Because oftentimes I'll tell photographers, if you have a picture that you love, that you're proud of, think about, hey, can I expand on that? Can I start a story with that? Can I start a theme about that? Because a lot of times that's where it starts, just with a photo that you're excited about. Because projects oftentimes start with passion. You got to have that passion.
It's the second time that word came up today. Yes.
It's an important word.
Very important.
Yeah.
Passion, that's correct.
It carries you through the ups and downs because these projects are hard. You run into hurdles. But if you've got the passion, you can get through it. You'll keep persevering.
That's it.
So when you were assigned to the story initially, it was you and a writer. And I'm assuming that you found yourself in that situation for a lot of stories. Are there ways that you seek to work with a writer so that you make sure there's continuity between the images and the text?
Yeah. A lot of assignments that I've done over the years, I do work with a reporter. And a lot of times it's great. What you have to do, I found out, is a lot of times I'd get sent out on something I'm there with a reporter. The reporter's interviewing someone. And so my picture is basically a person sitting in a chair answering questions. That is not a picture.
Right.
So, once we started to get some great visual photo editors, visually thinking photo editors, they would say, well, listen, let the reporter go out and do the story, come back. We'll look at the story and we'll come up with a visual way to tell this story. And it was so much better. I mean, in terms of the visual representation in the paper.
Sure.
Just thinking of things visually. And, that wasn't always the way.
Right.
But it makes such a difference, about thinking, okay, what's the best way to visually tell this story? And a lot of times it's not, with the person sitting there answering questions. I mean, sometimes I'd like to be there during that process, especially in a long-term project, because I'd learn things that would spark an idea of things that I could do. Like I wouldn't be sitting there during the interview to photograph necessarily. I'd be sitting there to glean information that I could take to find something visual.
Good point. Yeah, yep.
But there would always be writers that I loved working with. Like at the Chronicle, there were several writers that I loved working with. And we would always pitch stories. We'd come up with ideas and pitch stories that we wanted to do. And it was great because we just made each other better.
Mm-hmm. Were you typically taking the photographs as the writer was working on the article, or would you work separately? Or was there no rule about that?
It was different. Like sometimes the writer would write the story and then I'd go photograph.
That's usually how I would be working.
Yeah. And that's probably more common. I mean, certain things, you don't have that luxury and you'd have to go together.
Right.
Yeah.
And as long as you like the writer, it's okay.
As long as they stay out of my picture.
There you go. That's right. You stick with the words, I'll stick with the visuals.
That's right.
What was the process like for getting the Pulitzer? Did you submit the story for that?
Yes. So the way it works is within the Pulitzers, there are 2 photography Pulitzers. And one of them is for breaking news photography and one is for feature photography. It can be one individual image or it can be a series of images up to 20. It can be shot by an individual photographer
or a group,
or it can be done by a staff. So that's the criteria and that's how it works. And the organization that you're working with will submit your work. So the Chronicle submitted this series of 20 images that told the story of Saleh's recovery, which involved my trip to Iraq to go meet up with his mom when she was finally coming to America. And so it was quite a journey in these 20 images. Yeah. Lots of emotion and lots of heart. And you really got to know this little boy and his family in these 20 images. So the Chronicle submitted that in feature photography. And 6 months later, I'd forgotten all about it. And it's like, hey, the Pulitzers are going to be announced on Monday. So Deanne, you should come into the office. And I said, oh, Monday's my day off.
They can do it on Tuesday. All right.
And they said, no, we really need you to come in. And I said, well, I don't want to just stand around, and be the loser.
So they knew.
They didn't know.
Oh, it sounded like they kind of knew and they were, okay.
So I'm in there and it was kind of awkward because I'm thinking, why am I here? But then the announcements came out and there were 3 finalists and I knew what the other 2 finalists were. That information came out a little bit earlier. So I knew that it was my series of work and another really powerful series of photographs of a young woman soldier who was injured and had brain damage from an IED. And then the other one was a single image from the war. So I knew it was, one of us. I didn't think I was going to win. And then the announcement came and this body of work won. And I was really very surprised.
And what did that do for your career? Were there opportunities that you were able to take advantage of to jumpstart things?
Yeah. Things started happening. A lot of opportunities started coming to me. I was a staffer at the Chronicle, and I stayed there for about 3 more years. I had a lot of opportunities of different things going on, different projects, and I was using my weekends and vacations to do all of them. And so finally, I decided, you know what? I think it was hard. It's like, okay, I'm going to walk away from a perfectly good job. And so it was a big decision, and I struggled with it.
Yeah.
I made the decision. I said, okay, I'm going to do it. And so I left there in 2008. So I've been freelancing since then.
Wow. And did you gravitate more to editorial clients at first and build corporate from there? Or?
Yeah. I love doing editorial work. But I started to branch out and do some commercial and some corporate work. And I loved that, different challenges with that. And I just loved learning. And I had done some sports work at the Chronicle. I had done some behind the scenes with athletes, like getting access with Barry Bonds, which was absolutely impossible, which I'm going to talk about in my talk tomorrow. I'm doing a talk about behind the scenes with athletes and celebrities. So I had done that project, and then Sports Illustrated and ESPN just started reaching out to me. So I've done a lot of work with ESPN and Sports Illustrated over the years because they really liked the behind-the-scenes storytelling that I was doing with sports.
Mm-hmm. I just wanted to jump back to one thing you mentioned with the Pulitzer was based on 20 pictures. Those are 20 pictures taken over what period of time?
About a year and a half.
Okay. Now, 20 pictures sounds like a lot, but that must have been agonizing to edit that series down to only 20 pictures. Want to talk about that a little bit?
There is something that I love so much about building a photo story, a photo essay. There is so much to it. You don't just grab 20 pictures and throw them together.
No.
The thought process that goes into it is agonizing. We spend so much time thinking about it. What are the 20 images that stay in? They're not necessarily the 20 strongest pictures. They're
components of a larger image.
Exactly. They have to work together.
Yes.
So we would think about things like we can't have these 2 pictures next to each other because the head size is the same. Mm-hmm. Now, that might sound crazy if you're not used to sequencing photos together.
That's right, yeah.
But what you want to do is you want every image to look different so that you keep the viewer engaged.
Exactly.
You don't want them to get bored.
It's not a series of mugshots.
No. And you don't want them to feel the same. You just want to shake it up, change things. So you do a wide shot, then a tight shot, and keep the viewer guessing, keep the viewer interested.
Otherwise, it's just lampposts along the side of a road.
I know.
You just glaze over.
Exactly.
You need that different graphic, different size and scale of each image.
Yep, to keep people engaged. And then so much thought goes into what is the first image?
The opener.
How do you start this story? And in some ways, you might think, okay, it's linear. So the very first photo that I shot of him. But that doesn't always work.
Correct, yeah.
Because I feel like the first image has to be powerful. It has to grab you so that people will look at this story.
You know what? Because otherwise they're just turning the page.
That's right. You gotta catch their imagination and make them want to know more. So the first image of this project, it ended up being a very powerful photo that had some mystery to it. It was really tight on one eye, and you could see that it was an injured boy, but not too much. Like you didn't see his missing eye. And I purposely cropped it like that because when I looked at him, I saw this spark in his eye, this spirit. And I just wanted other people to see that. I didn't want them to see the disfiguration because I wanted them to connect with this boy like I did and care about what happens in war. In this picture, besides the eye, you could see his dad's fingers kind of stroking Saleh's head. So it's storytelling. It had a lot of mystery to it.
And then what was the second picture?
The second picture, we stepped back a little bit because we wanted to, give some information to show that it's a severely injured boy in the hospital. And then there were just different elements that we wanted to bring in with every image. Then there was an image of Rahim praying. And we thought that was important. Let's show that this is a Muslim family. And so every single picture was there for a reason, but not necessarily the best pictures, which is interesting.
But it was not window dressing. Every picture had a point to be made, a statement.
Exactly. It was there for a reason.
Yeah.
There's a real art to sequencing photos. And I was working with some great editors. I just learned a lot from the way they put this together and watching decisions being made.
How many pictures were rejected that are absolutely awesome pictures? And they were, but they did not fit anywhere, so you couldn't use them.
Well, there were a lot. If you could imagine.
That's probably the most painful part of it, saying, but look at this image.
I know.
But there's no room and it doesn't work.
Oh, I'd try to fight for them. I didn't always win, though.
Right. But you have to fight, and that's the whole thing.
That's right. But a lot of it is having respect for the editors that you work with.
You have to trust them.
Yes, and I did. I had great editors at the Chronicle. I mean, they'd justify it, and I'd say, okay, you're right, but I still really like this picture.
That's a really important part of any collaboration. Okay, just trusting the other person. Okay, they're part of me, therefore I have to trust them, and I'm not always right.
Right. But then again, I was there, so a lot of things were really close to me, but they were able to kind of step back a little bit and look at it with a broader perspective.
Yep.
Yeah.
Objective rather than subjective. It's an important part of it, too. Okay, we are going to take a short break for traffic and weather, and we come back more with Deanne Fitzmaurice. Stay tuned.
Creativity that's all in. NVIDIA Studio is your creative advantage with state-of-the-art RTX GPUs that power the world's premier creative apps. Real-time ray tracing delivers hyper-realistic graphics, and the Studio suite of exclusive AI-assisted tools take your ideas and designs from concept to completion. With NVIDIA Studio drivers, your digital canvas is always up to date with maximum stability and performance, so you can focus on your next big idea.
Okay, we are back. And Deanne, there's one question we want to ask, amongst many more questions here, obviously. You've covered a lot of in-depth professional sports. Do your skills as a news photographer spill over to your skills at photographing sports and vice versa? Is there a synergy between the two?
There is. One big thing I learned from sports that has gone into all my other documentary work is anticipation. So when I'm on the sidelines of, say, a 49er game, I am anticipating where the action's going to go, who's going to catch the ball, where's it going to be, where's the big storytelling moment going to happen here, and then position myself on the sidelines so that with the lens I have, I'm in the right position to capture that moment.
So when all the elements come together, you just hit it then.
Yeah. But it's just a guess, though, because anything can happen. I try to stack the odds and say, okay, it's likely that this is going to happen. It's third down. I'll position myself over here. There's a lot, not only anticipation, but the research,
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Just researching the stories that I'm working on. If it's sports, I stay up on the sports coverage. I know what's going on in the sport. I'm reading the stories, so I kind of know what the storyline is. I know who are the players that have different things going on that I might want to watch for, just so that I'm aware, this is this quarterback's first time out, just knowing the little storylines so you know what to look for.
Exactly. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Very good point.
Yeah, because that's helped my sports photography a lot. But one thing that I did with sports photography really changed the trajectory of my career in some ways once I left the Chronicle. Because I had done this story early on about Barry Bonds. Now, Barry was known as being a very difficult athlete to deal with. He didn't like photographers. He would intimidate us. And I just couldn't figure out what was going on, what it was about him. And he was breaking all the records. He was, major home run. He just kept breaking home run records and setting new milestones. And it was phenomenal what he was doing. No other player had done anything like that. And so I was documenting what was happening on the field, but I was curious about who is this guy? What makes him tick? And so I tried to get access, and I went to the Giants and said, I'd like to photograph Barry behind the scenes. And they said, no way, that's not going to happen. Go talk to his agent. No way, that's not going to happen. So
at that point, you said, I'm getting this guy. That's
you
it.
got it. Exactly. But I wasn't sure how. So I go to spring training, and Barry arrives. And when he arrives, it's a big deal. All the editors want pictures of him. But instead of doing what the other players do, running around the field when they get there, he just laid back on his equipment. And I was thinking, that's kind of weird. So he's just laying down on the field. And I've got this long lens on a monopod, and I swing the lens to photograph him. And he looked at me and glared at me like he wanted to kill me. He's like furious with me. How dare you photograph me kind of look. And I'm thinking, whoa, that's awkward. Now what? I need to photograph this guy. My editor's waiting for pictures. And somehow I got up courage. I don't know where it came from. But it's like, hey, we're both adults here. I'm not going to put up with this, him staring me down like that. It's just unprofessional. So I'm sure all the other media behind me were thinking, she must be out of her mind. She's walking up to Barry Bonds. So I went walking up to him. I'm carrying my long lens. And I got there. I didn't know what I was going to say.
I love that part.
I had no idea what I was going to say, but I knew I was going to say something. So I get up there, I'm standing over him, and I say, Barry, do you have a problem with me photographing you? And if so, are there some boundaries that I should know about? And, and I'm thinking, okay, where'd that come from? But then I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, okay, this could go really badly. He did have a bat next to him. But instead, he paused and then he said, no, I don't have a problem. What's your name and who are you shooting for? I told him. And he said, okay, I'll call you D. So from that moment forward, he let me into his world. He wouldn't talk to anybody else out there, no other photographers, no writers, but he would always come up and say, hey, D, how's it going? What's going on? You seen any good movies lately? Just small talk. And then one day I said, hey, Barry, your fans want to know who you are as a person. I'd love to photograph you behind the scenes, at home with your family and off the field. And he said, yeah, okay, that's cool. So I just got tremendous access. I went to his home and was able to get all these pictures. And then what happened is Sports Illustrated and a lot of national publications saw this. And it's like, wait a minute. How did you get access with Barry Bonds? He doesn't give anyone access. So that started Sports Illustrated calling me with assignments regularly, and ESPN calling me because I had done something different. And so to this day, they continue to call me, more so ESPN, but they call me with assignments. Hey, can you go photograph the Super Bowl? And then they say, yeah, we'd like some action photos, but we'd really like some of your behind the scenes. And sometimes I can get access to things, sometimes not, but it's always just trying my best,
And you've established yourself as the go-to person for that sort of thing. Why? Because you took a chance of getting barked at.
Exactly.
Good takeaway there.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I think some of the best things come when you're out of your comfort zone. I was really scared walking up to him, but I didn't want to go a season long with him staring at me like that. It was just weird. And, I'm thinking, okay, we're both adults. And I was ready to have a conversation with him. Like, I was serious when I asked him. I said, do you have a problem with me photographing you? I kind of wanted to know if he did and why, and see if we could talk it out.
The fact that you even had the audacity to go over and try doing something, because everybody else apparently, he looked their way and they just soiled their trousers. You said, no, I'm going, oh, he's a human being. Good value to that one, boy. That's good.
Yeah. It did change my work. Editors started reaching out to me for that kind of work for years, not only with athletes, but with other things. It's just a matter of how far can you push, to get the access that you want and figuring out that fine line. Because you want to push, but you don't want to push people away.
Right.
It is a very, very fine line. It really, really is. But that's what you have to do, because if you don't, it doesn't happen.
Yep, exactly.
Doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Are there other athletes that you've photographed that you found a similar story?
Yeah, I've photographed a lot of athletes over the years. I'm always just I want to show who they are as a person, not so much who they are on the court or on the field. Sometimes you just can't get access, though. I'm going to talk about this a little bit in my presentation tomorrow. Sometimes you can't really get access, but you can photograph in a way that it looks like you have access.
Huh.
So, for example, Steph Curry from the Warriors, amazing player, an incredible human being. It's difficult to get access with him, but I've photographed him a lot over the years. And if I put together all those images that I have shot with him, it looks like I've had tremendous access with him. One assignment was ESPN reached out to me, "Hey, Deanne, can you photograph Steph Curry?" I said, "Yeah, sign me up. What's he doing?" And they said, "He's going to float in a sensory deprivation tank." Yeah, he does that for relaxation. It's like, oh, wow, that sounds amazing. So I go and I photograph him floating in this tank. So you add all those pictures together,
Sure.
I have him golfing and just lots of different things. And it, looks like I've had access with him, but I just approach every assignment with what more is there here? For example, I was assigned to photograph the NBA Finals for ESPN. And after the final game, the Warriors lose, and I walk out to the parking lot with Steph Curry, smiling the whole time. Hey, how you doing? Probably not supposed to be there, but, I'm just chatting with Steph as he's walking out, so no one said anything. And then I'm out there, and this incredible moment happened where his coach, Steve Kerr, came out to just have a few words with him at the very end of the season after they had poured their heart and soul into it. And it was just this beautiful little intimate moment. No other photographer got, and I wouldn't have got that if I didn't, just pushing the boundaries just a little bit.
And it's probably even more important with sports photography, because one of the things that always struck me is that unlike most other fields of photography where you could get around and move around, when you're doing sports events, you're kind of limited to 2 or 3 areas with a zillion other people who are trying to get the same shot as you. And to be different and get something that nobody else has, you have to effort. It does not fall in your lap.
It's so true. One thing I do is I see where the photographers are going, and I go the other way.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Another thing is having great editors, because the photo editors will call me and they'll say, "Deanne, do your thing." And I check with them and I say, okay, so if at the Super Bowl, for example, if I miss some of the big plays, you're okay with that? Because I might be working the edges trying to get something else. So I get that clarified and they say, yes, we trust you. Don't worry, we could get something from the wire if we need it. We'd rather have you try to...
Because there are 50 people trying to get that other shot that you just described.
Exactly. So, they appreciate that I'm trying to get storytelling images.
And that is probably one of the biggest secrets of how to get ahead in this day and age when we're in a world where a lot of people have camera equipment. Look, it's not hard to take a technically good photograph anymore. It used to be a big deal. You had to understand the art and craft. Now you don't. Now you have to be able to see and anticipate.
Right.
And think.
Yeah.
Because technically it's all done already.
Yeah. You have to do something that makes you stand out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was just on the sidelines photographing action with the Giants, the 49ers, I wouldn't have stood out nationally. It's like, maybe you get a good picture once in a while that other people see.
No, the security cameras in the stadium also every once in a while capture a good image too that most people don't see. But
good point. Good point.
So what are you working with for gear these days?
Yeah, I shoot Nikon. I'm a Nikon ambassador.
Right.
I shoot the Z8, which I am so excited about. I absolutely love this camera. It's only been out several months. And I had the Z9 before that, and I loved everything about that camera, but I just felt like it was a little bit too big and heavy for everyday, like street shooting. So my dream was that they'd come out with something a little bit smaller, but that had all the technology of the Z9. And this fits the bill. So I have made the transition to mirrorless, and I love it. At first, I wasn't sure, but ever since the Z6 and the Z7 came out in 2018, I started moving into mirrorless, but I still had my DSLRs. I had the D5 and the D850. But then I started to really get comfortable with the mirrorless and really liked it. I like a lot of things about it, lighter weight, smaller footprint.
I like the WYSIWYG aspect of it, that you could adjust color, tone, exposure, and everything. It's
Exactly.
right there.
I
What you
know.
see is what you get.
Yes, that is something that I love. The electronic viewfinder is amazing.
And the resolution is finally at a point where it's pretty equal to glass. I used to say, no, an optical finder is still the way to go, but no, they got it.
Yeah, and the lineup of lenses that Nikon's coming out with, it just feels like, every few weeks there's something new. So I'm having to make some tough decisions on what to get.
No, they're very, very easy. Just don't look at the bill when it comes in. That's all.
So speaking of lenses, do you have a favorite?
I've been shooting prime lenses a lot. I love the 85-1.8 and I love the 50-1.8. So those are two mirrorless lenses that I use all the time. I have the 24-120 f4 that I love. That's like a go-to lens. I always have it with me. So those three are kind of my primary lenses that I always have with me. I also still have the 105 f-mount lens. It's a 1.4, gorgeous. I haven't been able to part with that yet, so I use that with the adapter. I just love it. It's like an incredible portrait lens. The bokeh is beautiful.
I have an old 51.2 AIS Nikkor that, to me, it's a magic lens. Although I'll adapt that to anything I ever own.
Amazing.
That's a unique
Classic.
tool. Yep.
So on the subject of gear, back in 2005, you were one of the founders of Think Tank. What are you doing with Think Tank these days, and how do you work your schedule for Think Tank around photo assignments?
How many sewing machines do you have?
So believe it or not, there were sewing machines in the garage in the start of Think Tank. I was a staff photographer at the Chronicle. My husband was a staff photographer at the Examiner.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah, rivalry, trying to outshoot each other on assignment. But we were trying to carry our gear around, figuring out how do we get our gear on airplanes? How do we run up and down the sidelines? We just felt like the bags that we wanted didn't exist. And so my husband, Kurt, he started trying to design some bags to solve some of the problems that we had at the Chronicle and Examiner. And we all had the same problem. So we're trying to solve by designing some bags that would really just help make our lives easier, save our backs. And so Kurt ended up meeting Doug Murdoch, who was a bag designer. And we ended up teaming up, Doug Murdoch and Mike Sturm. And they're bag designers. They know how to solve all these problems that we have. Kurt and we have the problems. We say, okay, we need something that does that. So that's kind of how everything got started. We came forward with the problems, and they came forward with the solutions. So, here we are. It was 2005. So 18 years later, it's unbelievable. But we have hundreds of bags, rollers and backpacks. And we just came up with this great bag I'm really excited about. It's designed for photojournalists, but I think a lot of other photographers are going to like it as well. But it's a bag that can be a shoulder bag, can be a belt pack, can be a crossbody, and can be a sling bag.
Okay.
Wow.
I'm interested.
Yeah, it can be worn anyway. It's kind of like a dream bag I've always wanted. So we designed this, and it just came out about a month ago. It's called the Press Pass.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've got 2 sizes of that, press pass 10, press pass 20, and then a press pass sling. It's a dedicated sling. But they're really great bags. I'm so excited about them. And yeah, people have been responding well to it. You know, they're just kind of coming out on the market now.
Cool.
So when I left the Chronicle, it's like, okay, what do I want to do now? It's like, do I want to be a full-time bag lady? Do I want to put all my time into think tank or do I want to continue being a photographer? And I decided that I want to continue doing the work I do with my photography, which actually helps think tank because I'm out there on the street with these problems.
It's easy to refine a product when you're living with it.
Yes, exactly.
And I think it's not only bags, it's a lot of other products. You could say that, you know, it looks great. It's a gorgeous bag, but you could tell the person who designed this never had any intention of actually living with it and using it for what it was intended to be used for.
Right. I know. And we just want our stuff to work, and we test it like crazy. Like this press pass bag, during the design process, we sent this bag out to 30 photojournalists and said, hey, test this bag, see what you think, and give us some feedback. So we took all that feedback. A lot of feedback we got was some people said, I'd like one a little bit smaller. Some said, I'd like one a little bit bigger.
Depending on how big they were or small they were.
But also how much gear they like to carry. So we ended up making a little bit smaller size and a little bit bigger size. So we took that feedback, and that's what we've done from the beginning. Just listen to photographers and the things that we're known for, you know, quality and customer service. And so all that stuff goes into it. So I'm involved with design of various things. I chime in on different things, just do some marketing work around the peripheral. We have an amazing team of people. They're brilliant, and they take care of everything.
But one of the latest additions to Think Tank is you just started a podcast.
Yes, yeah. That's been so much fun. You know, I was just thinking, I know so many photographers, and they're such interesting people.
Yes.
I mean, you kind of know about this, right? And it's like, yeah, I just want to reach out to them and have conversations with them. I just love talking to photographers. And I just pitched it to the team and said, hey, what do you think? You think we should do this? They said, sounds good to us. Yeah, let's do it. So I just reached out to some friends and said, hey. So we interviewed Amy Vitale, who I absolutely love. She's a good friend and amazing photographer and has made such a big impact in the industry. So I wanted to talk with her. That episode just came out about a week ago, and we have more coming up. And we interviewed Jody McDonald and Steve Winter and just some really interesting people in the business.
Cool. So does Think Tank have any other new products coming to market soon?
All along through the history of Think Tank, photographers have said to us, you guys make such great bags. It's way better than my luggage. You know, my luggage, the zippers always break. Why don't you guys make luggage? So, you know, over the years, we always said, no, we make camera bags. But we kept hearing it. So we said, all right, let's try this, you know, let's do this. So just about a month, 2 months ago, we launched a series of bags that are designed to be luggage, not camera bags.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah. So that has just launched. Yeah.
Who's carrying it? Have you been getting it out there?
I mean, it's probably at B&H. So that's something new that we're excited about.
Fantastic. And I was looking at your website and noticed that in January 2024, you're going to be giving a lecture titled Luck is a State of Mind. So on that note, can you give us a little backstory about the role luck has played or not played in your career?
Yeah, I started putting a lot of my work together when I was thinking about doing a talk and, you know, looking for the themes. What are the themes that keep rising up? And luck was one of them. But I realized that, yes, I've been lucky, but I have to put myself in the headspace for that luck to unfold. Here's an example. I was on a plane and I was getting ready to fly to Seattle. This really interesting woman comes walking down the aisle. She's about 6 foot tall, tattoos all over her arms, short, spiky hair. And I'm thinking, wow, that is an interesting looking woman. I wonder what her story is. As luck would have it, she sits next to me. I started talking to her. Turns out she runs this church for people that are battling drug addiction, all kinds of things in Denver. And she has a PhD in theology, and she's this fascinating person. Her name is Nadia. I say, hey, Nadia, I would love to come to Denver and photograph you in your church. And she said, no, we're not interested in that. My congregation would not want that. And I said, okay, that's fine. And then as she was getting ready to get off the plane, she said, if you're really interested, you can find me on Twitter. I said, okay, that's fine. So I decided if I'm still thinking about this story a week later, I'm going to reach out to her. However, she reached out to me. She said, Deanne, the Washington Post is going to do a story on me. She was on a book tour, and they want a photographer. I told them I know just the photographer. They know your work. So next thing I know, I'm flying to Denver. So a little bit of the access that we talked about, how far can you push and creating a place where you might have some access, but also luck. I kind of put myself in the position for that luck to happen, to get that great assignment with the Washington Post.
It's like winning the lottery. You got to spend the buck.
Right, exactly. So I put myself out there by saying, I want to come to Denver and photograph you. I mean, realistically, that'd be kind of ridiculous. I'd have to buy an airline ticket, and then what am I going to do with it? Maybe I could get it published. This is kind of ridiculous that I even suggested that. But you just never know what's going to happen.
No.
Synchronicity.
Yes, synchronicity is a big part of my work. Yeah. The woman's name is Nadia Bowles-Weber. Fascinating woman. So I did a story on her, ran big in the Washington Post. So I think that might be an example of luck.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's just taking chances, putting things out there. With Bonds, I confronted him, which is not the normal way you would think that you would get access. With Nadia, I just took a chance. So I think there's a lot to putting yourself in a position where luck can happen.
And just doing a read of your psyche and what it's telling you inside.
Well, that's really true because I believe that we need to be in tune with what we're interested in and what we want to photograph. I had been thinking about that a lot before that moment with Nadia. And it's like, I want to do the stories that I'm interested in.
Sure.
And so she comes along, she's interesting, and I'm thinking, I want to do a story on her. So kind of trusting my gut.
Yeah.
Because that has served me well.
Exactly. So are there other stories that you have in your gut that you're anxious to work on? Or?
Always. Yeah, always. I spent 10 days in Maui for NPR working on the fire story last month. I've been spending a lot of time in Dublin, Ireland, working on a project. I have been commissioned by a museum there to document Dublin from an outsider's perspective. So it has been so much fun exploring that city.
Those are not the kind of assignments that come up very frequently.
They aren't. I feel so grateful.
And it's open-ended. I mean, it's your vision of it. It's not like, we need you to photo. No. What do you see?
Exactly. Yeah. So kind of a dream.
Yeah.
And I'm really enjoying the process of exploring the city and figuring it out and, what's interesting visually here.
Do you have Irish heritage?
I do. If you have Fitz as part of your last name, you're in a pretty good position to get a gig like this. Another project, I just took a deep dive into my archives and working on pictures of San Francisco from the late 80s through the 90s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and found lots of treasures there.
I bet.
So I've been working on pulling that together.
That was a really big time.
Yes, lots of interesting stories were happening at that time, stories that had nationwide impact.
Cool. Do you have any exhibits or events coming up?
Well, the Dublin project is set to be a book and an exhibit, and that'll be next year. Yeah, so that's kind of the next big thing in terms of exhibit, book.
That's so exciting. Can't wait to see more of that.
Yeah, thanks.
It's been enjoyable speaking with you today. It's refreshing. And I think one of the big takeaways for our listeners is the fact that, you get an idea, you follow it, you stick with it, take a chance, ask Bonds what's bugging him, Okay. And then, so, sometimes you have to just take a chance. It could backfire on you, but if you don't take that chance, you're not sitting here with us in front of a microphone.
Exactly. Now, I didn't tell you the stories where it did backfire.
Well, now we took one break. We could take another break and come back for that if you want. Because no, okay, and I'm sure we've all got those stories too. It's really, really great talking to you. So if our listeners want to catch up with more of what you're doing, where should they go to aside from the Think Tank website?
Yes, my website is just my name, DeanneFitzmaurice.com. I'm on Instagram, Deanne Fitzmaurice, Facebook, Twitter, kind of the usual places.
Okay. That's great. All those addresses will be on our show notes, so our listeners will be able to pick up on it and track you down. Great. So again, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of your podcast. It's been absolutely wonderful speaking with both of you.
Yeah, it's been
great. And now
great.
you're a card-carrying member of interviewees of the podcast.
Okay.
Welcome to the club.
Thank you. Thank you. That makes me feel so included.
And if you are a fan of the show, but not yet a subscriber, head on over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, and click on subscribe. You can also find us on the Explorer blog, where we post photos from our guests along with our show notes. And please join us on Facebook at the B&H Photography Podcast Group, where you can share your favorite photos and comments about the show. I'm your host, Alan Weitz. Jill Waterman is our creative producer. Episodes are recorded, mixed, and edited by technical producer Mike Weinstein. Our executive producer is Grant Willig, and our editorial director is Sean Steiner. On behalf of all of the above, thank you so much for tuning in today.
Thanks to NVIDIA for sponsoring this week's episode.